It's time for Watts on Wealth Radio with Barry Watts and your host, Ralph Hibb.
It's one big, beautiful bill, what President Trump named his signature piece of legislation. Not everybody thought it was beautiful. Even the president's closest advisors were frustrated with some of what came through in the measure that President Trump signed on the 4th of July. In today's episode, this Sunday on Watts on Wealth, retirement designer, tax strategist J. Barry Watts, the founder of the Wealth Care Corporation, headquartered right here in Springfield at Battlefield Road and 65, starts off the show by diving into the new tax bill, the big, beautiful bill, and helping us begin to understand what's in it for us. My goodness, a long highway down the road of what is in this bill. First of all, good morning, Barry. How are you?
Well, good morning, Ralph. I'm doing well. It's one big,
Very
beautiful
good.
Sunday here in the
It
Ozarks.
It is.
And all is well. How are you today?
Very good. You know, being a former newscaster and starting here in the Ozarks at KSPR and went on to Kansas for a while, still watching the news. And, okay, what's happening on the vote? What's happening on the bill? Okay, that passed. It passed in the Senate. Okay, now it's going to it passed in the House. And then there we go. And then the big ceremony at the White House. So watching all that stuff. And here we are. We were wondering if all this might have been taking place toward the end of the year. But middle of the year, Barry, they got it done.
And hey, Ralph, I wanted to let you know, though, before we go any further, that I have got my fellow advisor, Matt Dean, here at the microphone with us this morning to help us unpack the good, bad, and ugly of this new tax legislation that Trump signed. So good morning to you, Matt.
Good morning, Barry. How are you?
Say howdy to Ralph.
Hey, Ralph. How are you?
Good. And Matt, you're becoming a superstar on the radio on the Sunday show here. I'm glad to have you along again this weekend.
It's so good to be back. Thanks for having me, Ralph. It's a great time.
So, Ralph, here's something you might not be aware of as we recently remodeled our offices over at Battlefield in 65. Yes. And it was an arduous process. We were in it for months. It was a mess everywhere. It was just miserable while we were in the midst of it. We got it all done. And last week, my dad and mom, we went out to dinner. And this was over the holiday weekend. We went out to dinner with my daughter and her husband, who were here in town, and mom and dad were there, and my mother-in-law was there. And so anyway, we brought them back to see the new office now that it's been remodeled. And so my dad walked in my conference room, which, by the way, is labeled the Table Rock Room. All the conference rooms are named after lakes.
They are,
and they're named according to their size. So our smallest conference room is Pomme de Terre. Stockton and Taney Como are the two mid-sized conference room, and Table Rock is the big conference room. That's the one that I happen to use. So my dad walks into the Table Rock conference room, and he takes a seat over in the corner where there was an easy chair, and he was needing a chair. And as he sat there, he just looked at me and he said, "So what's this one big, beautiful bill thing going to do for me?" Well, that's a great question, Dad. In fact, I think I'll talk about that on the radio. So this one goes out to Dad. Jim Watts in Republic, Missouri. This show is for you as we unpack President Trump's one big, beautiful bill. Matt, the first thing that happened with the big, beautiful bill was
permanent tax changes, especially tax cut extensions.
Permanent. That's an interesting word. We'll unpack that one for itself in just a moment. Well, so I think what you're referring to is the tax brackets. You know, they were slated to increase at midnight on December 31st of this year.
That's right.
And so like people who were in the 12% bracket were going to get an increase of about 25% in their taxes. Well, that's not going to happen now. Now, where we were, what was going to happen was in 2017, taxes were cut, but that was going to expire at the end of the year. And so what they did is if they say one big, beautiful bill cuts taxes, that's wrong. It doesn't cut taxes. What it does is it just canceled the increase that was coming. You may say, well, Barry, that really doesn't matter. The same effect. Well, no, it does matter because my taxes next year are not going to be less than they are this year. They're just not going to be more. So tax brackets are going to stay the same. The low bracket's going to be 10%. The high bracket's going to be 37%. Unfortunately, I'm familiar with that. And businesses are going to see a 21% tax across the board. So that's what's happened to tax brackets. Now, you used a word there, Matt, that was kind of interesting. You used the word permanent. Why don't you talk to me about that a little bit?
That's right. I had some thoughts on that earlier. Whenever we heard word that these tax cut extensions were going to be permanent, I kind of thought, well, is there anything really in Congress that stays permanent? I mean, you get legislative changes every 4 years that swing in the other direction as soon as the other party's back in.
Yeah, it's not going to be permanent. And there's actually a reason beyond even the other party being back in that it's not going to be permanent. And what do you think that reason might be, Matt?
Well, we have so much debt. That's got to be a big part of the equation. Something's got to change eventually, is my thinking.
Well, we've got to pay the debt down and we got to pay the interest on the debt. So the fact is, this notion that these new tax rates are permanent, that's overselling it a little bit. I think there's nothing changing them right now, but something will change them. And I don't think the story has changed at all. Long-term tax rates must go up because that's the only source that the government has to raise money. Tax rates have to go up, and they're going to go up when somebody galvanizes the Congress enough to realize that we have to be responsible and pay our bills, or we're still going to lose our country. So none of the story has changed except for the fact that tax rates just aren't going up next year.
Barry, you know when I think that change is going to happen?
When is that?
I think it's going to happen sometime within the next 8 to 10 years when the Social Security funding issue comes knocking at our front door.
You know, we talked about that on our show last week about how Social Security goes broke. And that is one of the pressures now in 2034 that is going to come back against tax increases. So you're absolutely right. That's a very good suggestion. I think that's likely to be the case. So let's talk a little bit more about what other things came down the pike with the extension of tax cuts. First of all, if you're a business owner, the qualified business income deduction stays in place. It allows small business owners earning $400,000 or less, Schedule C or corporations that are S status, to ignore basically the first 20% of their income for tax purposes. And the idea is that they'll then reinvest that money into growing their business if they don't have to pay a tax on it. It's a really big win for most people if they qualify. Unfortunately, I don't qualify. Because they weed you out if your company is too large, and our company has grown beyond that. But small business owners are going to benefit from the tax deduction staying in place for qualified business income. Capital gains rates, no changes on those. If you make up to $96,000 in income, you don't pay any capital gains. If you make over $600,000, you pay 20% tax on capital gains. So if you're between that $96,000 and $600,000 number, you're in the 15% capital gains tax bracket. And that is where most of our listeners are going to be. Now, on last week's show, Matt, we talked about being able to avoid capital gains taxes using opportunity zone investments. And so you don't have to worry about capital gains. If you're paying attention, there are ways that you can sidestep those as well.
That's right.
There was a little change in how the standard deduction and the itemized deduction work. Can you kind of unpack that for us a little bit?
Well, you can itemize medical and dental expenses exceeding 7.5% of your adjusted gross income.
So everybody does that?
Yeah, as long as you can itemize.
Well, if you can itemize. So the point is all taxpayers fall into two different categories.
Right.
There's you either itemize or you use what's called the standard deduction. Now, for people who can itemize, there are several things that they can list. One is medical expenses, like you mentioned before. What's the next thing that you can itemize?
Oh, mortgage interest.
Yep. So if you're paying interest on your home, you can itemize that. Next thing, what can you do?
Money that you give to charity.
Yep.
Gifts.
Charitable contributions. Now, this got a little bit hairy. You can deduct all gifts up to 60% of your personal adjusted gross income, but the first 0.5% doesn't count. You can't deduct that. So why would this matter? Well, if you have enough itemized items, when you list them all up, well, then you may want to choose to itemize enough dollars. You'll choose to itemize instead of using the standard deduction. And we'll come back and talk about what those two numbers are in just a moment. But one of the ways that we help people get to itemize is by using a donor-advised fund to maximize their charitable giving. So there's a special way you can give to charity. Now, an interesting thing they did change in this tax law is this. Anyone, you don't have to itemize for this, anyone can deduct $1,000 in charitable gifts per year. Isn't that interesting? So get out your pocketbook and get generous, at least up to the $1,000 level, because you're going to get a tax break for that. We had a salt deduction that my doctor said that was good for high blood pressure. Tell me more about what he meant.
State and local taxes. That's the SALT abbreviation.
Yeah. And so what happened to those?
Well, they were brought back, is my understanding.
Mm-hmm. They were increased. You can now deduct up to $40,000, but they limited it. You can only do it from the year 25 through the year 29, and then that will go away, and we'll argue about this again. So what had happened is they had said when you're itemizing, you can't deduct your taxes that you're paying locally. You used to be able to do all that. And then they took all that away from us. And now they've added it back in up to $40,000 in local taxes. So that's your real estate tax, any state income tax you pay, any other kinds of taxes that you might pay to the city where you live. You can deduct that. But if you make more than $500,000 a year, well, then you can't deduct it. So there again, for our listeners who are doing better, who are in the top end of the earning bracket, they won't be able to do that.
And sorry, Florida, no benefit for you there. No state taxes.
Because there's no state tax in Florida or Tennessee or those kind of places. And so they don't get that particular experience. So that's what happens if you itemize. And in order to itemize, if you're married, you need to have a list of all those things that we just mentioned, and they need to tally up to more than, what's the number, Matt?
$31,500.
So single, it'd be $15,750.
Yeah.
Married, it'd be $31,500. So if your itemized list doesn't come up to that number, well, then you're going to want to use the standard deduction. And the standard deduction, singles $15,750, married is $31,500. But if you've got a lot more in mortgage interest and medical expenses and charitable gifts and so forth, well, your Schedule A, which is where you put your itemized deductions, could be north of $100,000, and that would mean that you save on taxes as well. So let's talk a little bit about senior citizens. There is a little gift for them there, although Trump did not deliver on the fact that Social Security was going to be tax-free. Tell us about the senior citizen tax, Matt.
Well, until 2028, $6,000 single, $12,000 married gets deducted. That phases out for $75,000 in income for single filers and $150,000 for married filers.
So, the average person is making about $20,000 in Social Security. And so married people only get to deduct $12,000. So it's kind of half of the Social Security gift that was supposed to come your way. By the way, if you buy a new car, you can now deduct $10,000 in interest on your new car purchase for an American-made car, and you don't have to itemize for that to happen. And one of the big things that affects some of our clients, the Wealth Care Corporation, is the estate tax exemption, which will increase to $15 million per person. So double that if you're married, $30 million that you do not have to pay estate taxes on. And that's a pretty big blessing if you use it correctly. And so we're going to talk when we come back from the break about how to use that correctly. Matt, this is all a part of making sure we get the taxes right, because everybody wants to talk about retirement in the concept of how they're handling their investments. I'm just going to tell you folks, investments is less than 20% of the conversation. There are a lot of other things you have to deal with. One of them is taxes. And if you don't get the taxes right, nothing else is going to matter. Call us at the Wealth Care Corporation. We can help you. Ralph will tell you how to reach out to us.
So we encourage you to call today at the Wealth Care Corporation, 417-200-3500. Text the word visit this Sunday to that same number. Somebody from the Wealth Care Corporation will reach out and set a time for you to talk with Barry and the advisors about reducing your income tax bill, especially with what's going on now with the changes. So once again, that number, 417-200-3500, and call right now. Barry, a time for a break, and we'll be right back in just a moment here. Don't go away.
Explore how Barry Watts can support your financial aspirations. Set a consultation by texting VISIT to 417-200-3500. Discover the possibilities at 417-200-3500 with a simple VISIT text.
Do you think you'll pay lower taxes in retirement? Really? Many people go into retirement assuming that, but end up paying as much, if not more, in taxes than when they were working. How taxes can affect your retirement is one of the chapters in Watts on Wealth, the latest book written by local tax strategist and retirement designer Barry Watts of the Wealth Care Corporation. Barry takes you through the many tax considerations you should make before you retire. To get your free copy of Watts on Wealth, the book, call 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. The book is full of actionable retirement tips and strategies Barry has gathered from his more than 30-year career in helping families just like yours retire successfully. Get your free copy of Watts on Wealth, the book, now by calling 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. Advisory services provided through WealthCare Asset Management, LLC.
For a more confident retirement journey, get Barry Watts' Wealth Care Kit. Discover strategies addressing life's biggest retirement obstacles. Request yours by texting KIT to 417-200-3500. Again, that's KIT to 417-200-3500.
Welcome back to Watts on Wealth. And Barry and Matt Dean, we're going to talk about estate and death taxes. The current exemption is $30 million per couple. Barry, getting back to it in our main conversation on our topic of the day, doesn't that cover everybody in our listening audience, $30 million? So are death taxes really an issue in the Ozarks?
Well, everybody is always a big word to use. So no, there'll be somebody in our listening audience who is not covered by that $30 million per couple, $15 million per individual. But, we don't see those folks for the most part. I've been at this 32 years, and I can only think of 2 cases where the total assets to transfer to the heirs exceeded $30 million. But those kind of cases do exist in the Ozarks. And so occasionally we'll see someone in that particular situation. The point is that with the new One Big Beautiful Bill, they expanded the exemption of what you're allowed to pass on to your children from $13.9 million per person. That's what it is in 2025. To $15 million per person. So you, Ralph, can, because I know you're a big dollar TV guy, you can give $15 million to the kids, and your wife can give $15 million to the kids.
Well, that would be lovely if we could do that. Yeah.
Well, the kids are listening to the show and they're counting on it. Good news is that $15 million rate is indexed to inflation. So that'll continue to grow instead of being static as it is. See, the problem is this, Ralph. If you die with more than what the estate tax exemption is, whatever you have that's more than that, you have to pay 40% in taxes, federal taxes. And some states have these taxes as well, Missouri not being one of them. Now, it is true, Ralph, that most people are not subject to estate taxes, but they're subject to death taxes. Taxes that are triggered by death. And this has caused people to raise the hair up on the back of their head and say, what are you talking about? Matt, why don't you help them understand? What am I talking about?
Well, what happens if you have some retirement savings in a 401k, an IRA, some sort of a tax deferred account where all the taxes have not been paid on that savings yet?
That's exactly right. So that'll be taxable, and it's taxable at your heirs' tax rate, whatever that is.
Right.
So, for example, in my personal case, my tax rate is almost double what my parents' tax rate is. My brother's in the exact same shoes. So when we inherit mom and dad's money, if there's any of that money in qualified accounts, that means IRA type accounts, well, he and I are going to pay tax on it at twice the rate mom and dad would have to pay tax on it. Now, some people, when I'm meeting in the conference room with them, they'll interject here and they'll say, well, wait. When you die, everything gets a step up in basis, meaning you don't have to pay a tax on the gain. No, that's bad information. There are things like your farm, for example. If you die and then the kids inherit the farm, they will get a step up in basis, so they will not have to pay the tax on the gain in the value of the farm while you owned it. That applies to real estate, and it applies to many things, but it doesn't apply to IRAs. IRAs don't get a step up in basis because you're going to pay ordinary income tax on those, not capital gains. Now, when you inherit an IRA, do you have to take the money right away, Matt, or what's the rule on that?
Well, nowadays, the rule is that whenever you inherit IRA types of money, you have to pay all of the taxes on it within 10 years if you're the beneficiary.
So you got 10 years to get the money out of the IRA account.
That's right.
So think about this. Probably, if you're going to inherit money from your parents, you're probably going to be in the mid to later part of your career when you do that. Let's say over the age of 50 by the time your parents die and leave you money. And so you're probably earning the most money you've ever earned. You're in the highest tax bracket you've ever been at that time. And now we dump this extra income on you for that last 10 years of your earning cycle. So that's why people who inherit IRA money wind up having to pay more of it in tax.
Especially because it can jump them into a higher tax bracket in some cases.
That's the whole point. And so the solution to this, a way to fix that, and we help people with this at WealthCare all the time, is to actually start taking distributions from IRAs now while you're still living and paying the tax at your lower tax rate and moving that money into Roth IRAs. It's called a strategic Roth integration, an SRI. And when you do that, well, then the kids will inherit that money tax-free, and they'll get to leave that money in the Roth IRA for 10 years after you die and continue growing that money tax-free. And so in that case, we would recommend that they don't touch it until the last day of the 10th year, because we want to maximize all the tax-free growth they get. And then when they take the money out, they don't pay tax on it, but they do have to put it back in accounts that will be taxed from that point going forward. Now, here's an interesting little predicament we get in, Matt. So if mom's got $15 million in exemption she can use, and dad's got $15 million of exemption they can use, what happens when one of the two of them dies?
Well, wouldn't the surviving spouse be gifted all of the assets from deceased spouse?
Well, the surviving spouse generally will take those assets. That's correct. But what happens to the exemption?
Well, then the surviving spouse only has 15 million.
That's the problem right there. So if you've got, this is why trusts are used, is they are used to help people preserve the $15 million that they can pass on to their kid. So let me tell you this about trusts. I think they're overrated. A lot of people have trusts who don't need them. Think about it this way, Matt. When you create a trust, you've created an entity.
Like in a legal sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually a person in a legal sense. It's just not a natural person with a beating heart. You could also kind of think of it like a corporation if you wanted to think of it that way. And what happens is all the assets that you put into the trust are administered by the trustee, whoever that is. And oftentimes it will be you, because you put the money into the trust and you created the trust. So it's administered by the trustee. But when you die, then you name trustees to be successors behind you. So, for example, it's administered by the trustees for the beneficiaries. So right now, mom and dad administer their trust for the beneficiaries, which is them. But someday, if mom and dad became incompetent, for example, my brother and I would step in and we would administer the trust for the beneficiaries, mom and dad. Now, if mom and dad had died, we would step in and administer the trust for my brother and I and our kids, because our kids are named in that trust as well. So the interesting thing about a trust is that the trust lives on after you die. The trust doesn't die really until you put it to death. And it can hold all the assets that you put into it as long as you want it to, or it can distribute them entirely, and effectively you have put it to death. So that is what a trust is. Let's talk about who needs a trust and where it comes in handy. Well, if you have a second marriage, Matt, I think that could be helpful. Or a substantial amount of premarital wealth. You know, when I got married, we didn't have any money, so it just didn't matter. But if I married again, because if my wife passed away and I married again, or if she married again, it would be very important that they have trusts in place.
Because you have a his money and her money kind of situation.
That's right. And we got his kids and her kids, and I wouldn't want my money to go to his kids or her money to go to my kids. And I'd want to be sure Madison and Sydney are taken care of. So in the case of a second marriage, that would be a very helpful thing. Now, another case that we had recently show up in the office, it wasn't your case, but I don't know if you heard about it, where
tell me about it.
No, I want you to tell me about it. I think you know the story.
Okay, we'll jog my memory.
Okay, so you don't know the story. So we had a banker show up, and the banker had like $3 million.
I know this one.
And he showed up by himself. Now, that's a problem. We don't allow people to show up by themselves. You got to bring your spouse when you come. He said, I'm sorry I came by myself, but he said, my wife can't know I have this money. What do you mean she can't know? What kind of marriage is that? Well, the answer is it was a later in life marriage. First marriage, but a later in life marriage. And the wife couldn't handle money. And he was afraid that she would spend every last dime of it. So even when he dies, the wife doesn't get the money. She's the beneficiary, but someone else will be the trustee. So that was a perfect example of where a trust is a really good idea. Now, there's another place, Matt. We'll see if you can tee this one up. What do you think the third place that might be useful for a trust is?
Ooh, what happens if you have an in-law that becomes an outlaw?
Yep, it happens, doesn't it? You love your son-in-law or daughter-in-law until the day you don't. and they go south on you. And so you're like, okay, well, I'll die and the kids will get the money and they'll do fine with it. And then the in-law becomes a yahoo. That's the first step to becoming an outlaw, Matt. You become a yahoo first. So if anybody's listening, you think you might be sort of in the yahoo zone, you might want to pull it back and just so you can go back to just in-law status.
Mm-hmm.
But if your in-law becomes a yahoo on the way to becoming an outlaw, you may say, hey, I need to protect this money. So when it goes to my child, my son or daughter, that their spouse, who I'm not sure is going to stick around, doesn't get their hands on the money. And so that would be a way to use a trust that would be very beneficial. And so sometimes you've got heirs, children, grandchildren, who make bad financial decisions, and you don't want to equip them to make bad financial decisions. A way to deal with that is to use a trust that limits the decisions they can make. Trusts are good for disabled children and grandchildren if you need to fund them. So if those apply to you, those are some good reasons to use a trust. But if they don't apply to you, then maybe a trust isn't the best solution for you. There's a lot more to talk about trust, but here toward the end of our segment, Matt, I want to just zero back in on the issue of the estate tax exemption.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got $15 million and your wife has $15 million in exemption that you can pass on to your children, I know you don't have them yet, but money that you could pass on to your children, and you're very likely to hit these 15 million numbers because you're young and you got a long time to grow and accumulate your money. Well, if she should die, her 15 million expires and all the money flows over to you. Now you can only pass on 15 million.
And the other 15 is going to be taxed at 40%.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
But you can use trusts to preserve her 15 million and his 15 million.
So the trust catches the first 15 and then the second 15, and everybody gets the exemption.
You get to maintain and preserve the exemption for both of you.
Okay.
So that's the kind of work that we help people do and understand at WealthCare. And if you need to talk about that kind of tax savings using effective estate planning strategies, we'd love to help you. Ralph's going to tell you how to reach out to us.
Absolutely. Give them a call. You can text the word visit right now this Sunday to 417-200-3500. You fans of Watts on Wealth know that number by heart already. So text, visit, or call first thing tomorrow. Barry's also got his new book, Watts on Wealth, to unravel the mysteries and get rid of your concerns you may have about retirement. That is called Watts on Wealth. And Barry says, of course, you can buy it on Amazon for $18.95, but he'll ship you a free copy right now, thanks to listening to the show. And to get a free copy shipped to you, and Barry plans to autograph that for you, text the word book, B-O-O-K, text book to that same number, 417-200-3500. When we come back after this break, we'll dive into strategies to help your retirement dollars go farther and last longer. Stay tuned to more Watts on Wealth, and Barry and Matt and I will be right back after this.
Unsure of how market volatility might impact your investments? Speak with Barry Watts, who can offer strategies tailored to withstand market fluctuations. Just text VISIT to 417-200-3500 to meet with Barry Watts today. Again, text VISIT to 417-200-3500. Prepare for retirement with key insights from Barry Watts' WealthCare Kit. Get your essential guide by texting KIT to 417-200-3500 and start planning today. That's 417-200-3500, KIT.
Time for the second half of Watts on Wealth. This is former KSPR News Team 33 anchorman Ralph Hipp, along with J. Barry Watts. Barry's the main retirement wealth designer from the WealthCare Corporation. We are here on the radio with you every Sunday morning right here on Talk 104. And in this part today, we're talking about more retirement planning, Barry. I've heard you speak of stress testing a retirement plan. There's a lot of stress out there on its own, but stress testing a plan, what is that and why should we do that especially now?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned stress. I did have lunch with Congressman Burleson yesterday following the passage of this one big, beautiful bill thing. He was telling me that it had been a very stressful time in Washington and that everybody was kind of worn out. So stress affects all of us, even the people who are kind of at the top of the heap socially and politically. And certainly it stresses people who are in retirement days. And so stress is sort of a normal thing. And one of the first places that we talk about stress testing is in relation to cardiac stress testing. It's when they put you under stress and your heart under stress, and they see how you perform. Well, in the same way, Ralph, have you had a cardiac stress test?
I have. I did really well on that. And, they put the stickers all over you with the wires and make you run on the treadmill. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you done that too, Barry?
I've had the same thing. Matt hadn't had that. He's too young for
No,
that.
afraid not.
Too
Well,
young
they
for
put you on a treadmill, or in my case, it was on a Stairmaster, so I'm climbing the whole time. And so you're there in your gym shorts, nothing else. You get your tennis shoes on, but your shirt's off, and they got all these leads, these stickers on your chest, and they're monitoring your heart, and you can watch your heart go up and down, and then say, okay, we're going to make it go fast, 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 run, 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 and your heart just amps up and amps down and all these things. They're basically trying to create a heart attack for you so they can watch it happen on their little monitors. I'm always wondering, do we have the people here who can save me if I crash and burn?
My question is, how's your mile pace looking?
Well, they control it. That's the problem. And that is the stress by which they test you. So we want to put the same kind of stress on your retirement plan. So let's just say, Matt, that you've got your retirement plan all mapped out. Now, that should include knowing where your income is going to come from, the accounts it's coming from, how much income you're going to receive, what the tax will be on that income. And you should know that, get a load of this, for every year, starting now, until you're 100 years old. Now, if you've got that in place, here's my question. What if the stock market runs backwards? On average, every year it goes down about 15% at some point in the year, and it usually recovers. 6 out of the last 25 years, about a quarter of the time, or 1 year out of 4, you will have a year that actually ends up negative, and the average loss in the stock market will be about 17%. So imagine for me, Matt, if you are retired and your accounts went down in value 17%, and then you're withdrawing 4% on top of that. So add those two numbers together. Now you're down 21%.
Well, something's got to change,
Well,
either how much I'm taking out or how long I'm living.
Yeah, you'd think something's going to have to change. And what if it happened 2 years in a row?
Oh,
Now you're down 42%. Now, there are people listening to us. I've had people literally say this to me in my conference room and say, oh, you're just trying to scare me. Well, no, I'm just talking to you about the facts. See, some people think, well, that would never happen. It happened in 2000, 2001, 2002, 3 years back to back, where the markets were down 9%, 11%, and 22% respectively. Add those numbers up, 22 and 11 is 33, plus 9 is 42%. We were down over 40% in that 3-year negative period of time. Imagine if you'd been making withdrawals while you're down that much due to the market. 8 times in the past 90 years, the S&P has actually lost money in back-to-back years, 2 negative years. So that's a little less than a 1 in 10% chance based on that statistic. And so that means in a 30-year retirement, it could happen to you 3 times potentially. So if you did find yourself down 42% in 2 years, how long would it take to earn that money back, to get back to zero? Well, at a 40% loss, if you earned 5% per year and you stopped taking any withdrawals, it would take over 10 years to get back to break even. 10 long years. That's a third of your retirement, roughly. And so, Matt, we have a way at the Wealth Care Corporation of dealing with that kind of problem. And tell them what it's called.
well, it's a principal protection plan. And if whatever risk you do have subject to some of these losses in the stock market, well, whatever risk you have, it needs to be optimized so that maybe, hopefully, if the market goes down, you don't go as far down along with it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Principal protection is how you cure that particular problem, because one of the things that could happen to you if you got your plan all mapped out, the stressors could come, is that the stock market could run backwards, as we said. But the other thing that could happen is your spouse could go into long-term care. And you could wind up spending all of the family's retirement on the first spouse who got sick, who then dies. But there's no money left. They've eaten most of the retirement money up providing care for them. And the other spouse is going to live to be 95. There's no money left to take care of the other spouse. So in that case, you need a long-term care plan. A long-term care plan that's actually built into your retirement plan, because long-term care is one of the stressors. There's a third stressor we talk about sometimes, Matt. What's that?
Well, that's what happens if Your spouse dies before you do.
Well, I don't know what happens.
Well, that could force your plan to change. One Social Security check is going to have to go away, and their pension could disappear entirely or be reduced. They may not get all of that check.
So you should have an income plan that mimics what if that happened? What if your husband died? What if your wife died? How does that change your income? And that's the kind of stuff we do at retirement for retirees at the Wealth Care Corporation. And those are the areas in which we begin to stress test. So we stress test these retirement plans.
Right. The thinking is that if you identify a weakness, maybe you can fix it, and so that everything will be okay.
That's exactly the whole idea. We stress it against a bad time in the stock market. And we particularly stress against 2007 and 8 because the market lost 28% in that time period. And, it's possible in a year like 2007 and 8, you could have had a zero return or maybe even a slightly positive return, in which case that wouldn't have been very stressful. But are you invested that way? We stress it and test it against long-term care. How soon does the survivor run out of money? We stress it and test it against the death of a partner. How soon does it cause the survivor to run out of money? We test it to see, are you paying taxes on Social Security? Can they be avoided? We even tested to see what kind of taxes you'll pay at the time of your required minimum distributions and what IRMA penalties you will pay. Matt, explain what IRMA is, please.
Oh, IRMA, ugly Aunt Irma, as we like to call her around the office, is the income-related monthly adjustment amount to Medicare. So every year, Medicare looks back at your income from 2 years ago, and they use your income levels then to decide how much you're going to be paying for Medicare Part B and Part D every month. And if you're over certain income levels or ceilings, brackets is a good way to think of them, you might have to be paying more for your Medicare every month.
Matt, a lot of people who come in to see us, we ask the question, so do you have a retirement plan? Is it all designed? Oh, yeah, man, I got it. It's all taken care of. Everything's in good order. We start asking them about these things, and they aren't taken care of. Nobody has ever dealt with the taxes. Nobody has ever done a what-if scenario on long-term care or on the death of a spouse, or even a what-if scenario on if the stock market goes down. And so at the Wealth Care Corporation, we have designed a process called 6 Steps to Retirement Confidence. It's our own trademarked process that helps people move through those 6 steps. And we'll give them 5 steps. I'll just tell you right now, the 6th step is every year we get together and go through the 5 steps again to make sure that everybody's staying on pace. But Matt, walk us through quickly those 5 steps from the bottom step of the staircase all the way through step number 5.
Well, we always start with planning your income in retirement all the way out to your age 100 because
that's silly. I won't live to be 100, Matt.
Well, everybody could live to age 100, but that's not the point. The point is making sure that you don't run out of money and you're forced to switch to cat food as part of your diet at some point.
I like tuna fish, but that cat food makes me sick when Kelly opens a can of it to feed our cat. We have a cat over 20 years old. He lives on the back porch. And every morning he gets a can of cat food, and it stinks so bad when she opens that and carries it across the kitchen to her.
Does that cat also have a Social Security plan?
Well, he kind of does. He gets taken good care of at the Wealth Care Corporation.
And Barry
not at Wealth Care. He's actually at our house.
Oh, okay. So you're his Social Security.
Yeah, I am his Social Security plan.
Does he have a sitting on the porch money, Barry? I wanted to ask.
He's got all the sitting on the porch money he wants. He's got it really good. The animals at our place have it really, really good.
That's right.
So everybody needs an income plan. You may need one as good as my cat's got. What's the next step?
Well, the next step is tax minimization, making sure that you're not overpaying in certain areas of retirement, especially your income. Because the thinking is the more tax dollars you can keep in your pocket, the more room you have to enjoy your wealth and your family in retirement.
Just a typical case, how many dollars would you see saved in taxes when you put a tax plan in place?
Oh, probably $200,000.
Wow. $200,000 you don't have to send to the government. That's amazing. What's the third step?
Principal protection and risk optimization, making sure that all of the resources you've accrued to enjoy in retirement, making sure those don't go blowing away in the wind with a bad stock market and keeping them around so that you can enjoy them for as long as possible.
Now, I know the fourth step. That's dealing with long-term care, making sure that everybody has their long-term care plans in place so when an unexpected health event does occur, There's probably a 3/4 chance, a 75% chance that happens to the average listener out there.
Oh, and don't
Then-
forget that Medicare plan in the fourth step.
Well, that's a part of it too, is being sure they know how to pay for Medicare. But long-term care is what's scary, because that's the thing that'll actually destroy their wealth most quickly. And then the final fifth step is
A legacy plan, making sure that whatever happens, it doesn't go through probate where it can get tied up and it may not go to the people that you'd like it to go to.
folks, has your advisor got a certified process like that they use? And have they walked you through that process? Or are they just managing your money? And if they're just managing your money, here's the question I've got for you. How did they convince you to pay all those fees for only one step of the process when there were 5 steps of the process that needed to be gone through? If you're not getting that kind of care, you need to come see us at the Wealth Care Corporation. We'll walk you through the 6 steps to retirement confidence. And I think that it'll make a great difference in your life. Ralph's going to tell you how to make that happen.
Well, sure, Barry. And if you're worried about your retirement, having enough income so you never run out of money, as we talked about some of the basic concepts of what Barry does, protecting your principal from risk, reducing what you pay in taxes. How do you pay for the long-term care? How do you plan your estate? Barry and the team at the Wealth Care Corporation can help you with their 6 steps to retirement confidence. This process will take you through each of those areas we talked about, and building a solid plan, your concerns will start to fade away. So that number, mark it down, put it in your phone, friends. It's 417-200-3500. You can call or text the word visit today, or call first thing Monday. Someone from Barry's office will reach out right away and set a time for you to meet with Barry and Matt and the advisors, developing a retirement plan that is right for you. You'll feel confident about it and that everything's going to work out all right. So that number, 417-200-3500. Barry and the team, just a phone call away. Well, in a moment here, we get to our mailbag and break into some of your great questions as Watts on Wealth returns on this Sunday in just a moment.
Curious about securing your financial future? Barry Watts brings expertise to your retirement plans. Arrange a meeting by texting VISIT to 417-200-3500. Again, it's VISIT to 417-200-3500.
Imagine for a moment that an intense storm is pounding your house. Will your roof leak? Will the siding peel away? Will your basement flood? If your house is properly built and maintained, you'll be fine. But what about your 401k or your investments? The stock market has had a pretty good run the last few years, but is its current turmoil making you feel uneasy? Are you confident your portfolio is built to weather a financial storm? Now may be a great time to get a second opinion on your retirement plan. Call Barry Watts and the team at Wealth Care at 417-200-3500 now. They'll examine your portfolio and show you if your investments are in need of some weatherproofing. Call Barry Watts and the team at Wealth Care today at 417-200-3500 to get your no-obligation second opinion. Don't let your retirement get caught in the rain. Call 417-200-3500. Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk.
Market volatility can be daunting, but having a strategy in place can provide stability amidst the uncertainty. Consult with us to learn about approaches that address market ups and downs. Call 417-200-3500 to set an appointment and secure your financial footing. Again, just call 417-200-3500.
Time on the fourth quarter of the show. Yeah, we're getting to the last part of the show here. Your very interesting questions in Barry's email inbox, so let's go over some of those. Barry, the first one, my wife and I are having some serious discussions about what we want to do in retirement. I've traveled with my work for years. I just want some peace and quiet and go fishing in the Ozarks and stay close to home. My wife stayed close to home to raise our boys, who are now grown men, and she's been telling our friends all the places we'll go outside of Springfield when we retire. I'm done traveling for good with my work. I don't know how to tell her. So he goes, now what? Now what? What do I do?
Ralph, I hate this question. And we had a question very similar to this on our television show.
It's a common problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just got to say, I want to give some real serious advice to this listener. And here's my advice. Keep your mouth shut, pack your bags, and follow Proverbs 5:18, which says, rejoice in the wife of your youth. My wife was such a great supporter, and I'm so grateful for all that Kelly has done for me to help me be successful in my business. You know, Bill Kentling from Highlandville, but who lives out in Topeka, Kansas now at 85 years old, told me the other day that we were talking about some people that we knew in common who own a big company worth maybe as much as $1 billion. I don't know. It's a lot of money. He told me that one of the reasons that the owners of that company were successful was because they were married to women who supported them well. And I'm certainly one of those men who's married to a woman who supports him well. So here's the deal. When Kelly wants to go, I'll take her anywhere she wants to go, and I pretty much have. And I even say if she ever leaves me, I'm going to go with her. So I want to call your attention to the question where he said, my wife stayed home to raise our sons. What a blessing that is. She stayed home. She made a great contribution to your family and to the world. So here's the deal, dude. You need to pull your head out and get focused on this woman who has been such a blessing to you all these years. And if she wants to get on a cruise ship or an airplane, you need to make it happen for her. That's the best advice I've got for you.
Great. And now let's get to our next one, Barry. My mom just died, and now I feel like all of our family does is argue over what to do with her house and who will take care of what. My brothers and sisters and I, we're all in our 60s now, but I feel like we're children again and bickering. And I don't know if you can help us with our arguments. Could you please tell people why it's so important to take care of these decisions ahead of time?
Well, I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your mother. And the first question I would ask is, did she leave any instructions, either in a formal sense through a will or a trust, or did she at least have something written down? And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. I was just talking with a cousin of mine whose mother died over the weekend. And she was telling me that mom had written down what she wanted done and didn't want done. That was my Aunt Esther from down at Nixa. And so here's my advice to you in your situation. If you don't have specific instructions from mom, do this. Call the auctioneer and split the proceeds evenly. Have an auction, sell it all. Anybody who wants something can buy it out of the auction. And then a portion of the money that they pay into the auction will actually come back to them. Call the auctioneer, split the proceeds. Now, the deal is everybody needs to deal with this in advance. You're going to die. The Bible says in Hebrews chapter 9, it is appointed to man once to die, and then comes judgment. Now, my recommendation is you need to deal with the judgment part. And I've dealt with that personally. I would encourage you to. All of the judgment that was for me, and there was plenty because judgment comes upon sin and I'm a sinner. All the judgment that came to me actually has been transferred onto Jesus. He took my judgment on the cross. So when God looks at me, he looks at me through the lens of Jesus, and he sees me holy and righteous and pure. But all of us are going to die, and we are going to face judgment. You need to prepare for that. But then you also need to just make it easy on your family when you do die, and you need to get your affairs in order. Call the lawyer, get a will or trust. If you don't know who to call, where to begin, or how to do it, call us to Wealth Care Corporation, and we'll begin to direct you in the right way. We'd like to take care of that for you.
Very good. Let me get that number out again, Barry. 417-200-3500. 417 around Springfield, 200-3500 to reach out and set that time to talk with Barry yourself. And next up, here's a way to buy a house if you're going to try that. I've recently come into an unexpected inheritance, Barry. I'm wondering about ways to invest, or what should I do with this money? Can you guide me on investment strategies which will help me avoid a hefty tax bill? Man, that is what you do.
It is what we do. And Matt is a specialist in that area. I'm going to let him take that question.
Well, there's no tax until you've made a return on your money. So if this came in the way of an unexpected inheritance, then you should get a step up basis in what you received.
Well, yeah. So they wouldn't have a tax on if they inherited stocks or a farm or something like that. And they wouldn't have to owe any estate tax unless it was more than $13.9 million.
Right.
And then the estate would owe that tax. So I don't know, what kind of investment strategies would you guide these people to?
I just don't know. I just don't have enough information to guide them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So people oftentimes will throw you a question and, standing in the line at the grocery store or something. It's like, dude, I don't know. It's complex. We need to dig into it. And the only way we can do that is if you come see us or see another good advisor. It doesn't have to be us. So if you know somebody who's good at this, go see them. If you don't, and I'm guessing most of you don't, or you wouldn't be listening to our show, come see us at the Wealth Care Corporation, and we'll help you develop a plan so you know how to invest that particular money that you just inherited in a way that will be most tax efficient for you.
Right. And Barry and Matt, we've mentioned on the show, we don't want anybody to make a financial move based on what they hear us say on the radio. You got to have that individual conversation and get that going. Would this be the right strategy for you? And that call should be made. Text the word visit. Call first thing in the morning to Barry and Matt, 417-200-3500, and we'll talk about your situation. Okay, guys, I'm 68. My wife is almost 60. And they say, we want to leave an inheritance for our children. We've heard so many different possibilities of how to do that. And is life insurance a good way to do that?
It kind of reminds me going to the doctor and saying, are antibiotics a good way to keep me healthy? Well, if you have a bacterial infection, yes. But if you have a virus, no. And if you've got arthritis, no, that's not going to help. So is life insurance a good way? Well, life insurance is a way, and it can be a good way for some people. One of the things I like about life insurance is all the proceeds that come out of a life insurance policy are absolutely tax-free. So you never pay income tax on those proceeds. And depending on how old you are, you told us you're 68, so you could still get insurance at age 68, how old your children are, and the overall financial condition of all the parties, this might or might not be a good suggestion. Just don't have enough information. So I'm back to the answer. You need to see a good advisor. If you know someone you trust who you think is an expert in this area, then embrace them and let them help you. But if you don't know who to call us at the Wealth Care Corporation. You can sit down with one of our advisors who are specially trained in these particular areas, and they're going to tell you at the end whether you need life insurance or not. In fact, earlier this week, I was in a meeting where one of the conversations for a client who's onboarding now was about them qualifying for life insurance. And one of the other advisors intercepted, looked at the case and said, these people don't even need life insurance. It's not appropriate for them. And the advisor said, well, now that you think about it that way, you're absolutely right. I don't need to worry about that. And so not only are we giving that advice to you, but we give that advice to ourselves as we sit together in a group of advisors and we look at everyone's case and we say, here's where I'm headed with this case. What do you think about this? Who has another idea? Who has a better suggestion? And in that case, our client was actually helped by the fact that an advisor who's not on their case looked at their case and spoke into it and gave the advisor some important guidance that he needed.
Terrific. Barry, I'm going to combine this next question with what you just said. One of our listeners said, can you have too much life insurance and how do I figure out the right amount of coverage? And once again, get with Barry personally and talk about what's the right amount for you. Here's another one. I've heard you talk, Barry, about annuities on the show, but I don't know where you stand on those. Do you like them or not like them as a retirement tool?
Well, I like them generically, but that doesn't mean they're right for you. And if they are right for you, and what amounts? You certainly don't need to put all your money into that. So you too need a competent retirement designer to develop a holistic plan. You need to be sure that who you talk to is not an annuity salesperson. There are people who are doing radio and they have shows that are on every day where they're really just annuity sales guys. Whatever your problem is, the answer is you just need this good annuity. No, run. Those are not the right people. What you need is a holistic retirement plan that ultimately may or may not include use of an annuity.
Barry and Matt, that's going to put the top on our show, and we have a lot more good questions, which we'll have on a future broadcast, either television or radio. So Barry and Matt, thank you a lot for another great hour. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you today, Ralph.
Thank you, Ralph.
Absolutely. This is Ralph Hipp for Barry Watts and Matt Dean at the Wealth Care Corporation. And also, more great questions are coming your way on our television show. We've already had some episodes on this morning. We are on KY3, Color 10, KSPR, all the stations around Springfield. Barry, I don't know. If we were a little highbrow, we should be on PBS, don't you think? As KOZK?
I'm not really a PBS kind of guy. I watch PBS. I like PBS. Although I agree with Congressman Burleson, who said we should defund PBS because it's so darn liberal and always represents the left. So you're about to stoke me here at the close of the show and you don't have any time left, Ralph.
I know. We're out.
So we don't need PBS with tax dollars, but I'd be willing to do a PBS show, but I don't think PBS wants me. I'm a little too Ozarks, a little too homespun, probably a little too much hillbilly in me for PBS, except Missouri State does have a couple of shows where they go out and interview the hillbillies, and I might be able to star on one of those.
Well, that'd be good too, but we'll look for you on 3 and 10 and 33 and 49 and all that. So we'll get together again next time on the radio. Our friends, thanks for joining us so much here on Talk 104 this Sunday morning. And that is this weekend's radio, Watts on Wealth.
Thank you for stopping by Watts on Wealth. If you would like Barry and his team to help you make a plan to get to and through retirement, or would simply like a second opinion on your current plan, give us a call today. at 417 200 3500. That's 417 200 3500. And join us again next week for What's on Wealth.
WealthCare Corporation provides tax strategy, tax compliance, accounting, and insurance services through its affiliate American Tax Strategies, LLC. Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Past performance never guarantees future results. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for information and entertainment purposes only and should not be used as the basis for personal financial decisions without first consulting a qualified advisor. The information and opinions you've heard are believed reliable but cannot be guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness.